All right, so in this video, we're going to look at some of the methods on the date object. Now, I just want to mention, I know that this isn't the funnest stuff in the world, but it's really important to understand the basics and the fundamentals before moving on to, building projects, manipulating the DOM, and fetching data and all that. Okay, we'll get to that, but I think it's important to know the basics. So what I'm going to do here is just create a variable for our output, and then I'm going to initialize a date variable. So we'll say new date, and I'm just going to use today's date. So I'll leave that empty. The argument's empty. And then let's just do a console log of x. Now I know this might be a little confusing, this new keyword. We'll get to that later. We're going to get to object-oriented programming and get deeper into JavaScript. But for now, just know that what we're doing here is we're instantiating or initializing a date object into this D variable. Okay, now with like the math object that we used a few videos back, we would just do math dot whatever square root, and we use the math object directly. In this case, we're instantiating a date object into this variable. Okay, so I guess that's a good enough explanation for now. We'll get more into it later. So we already looked at some of the methods, such as toString. Okay, so if we do toString, it will just give us a string representation of the date. We also looked at getTime and also d dot, let's say, value of. Okay, so those will both give us a timestamp of the date in milliseconds. Now, if you want to get specific parts of the date, we can do that. So let's say we want to get the year. So we'll do d dot, and then there's a get full year method, and you can see it gives us 2022. Now, if I were to change the date up here by putting in, let's say 2020 slash 10 slash 12. If I do that, then the year is going to obviously change to 2020. All right, now we can also get the month. So let's say d dot get month. Now, what happened here? I used a colon. So notice that it says 9, and right now it's October, so this is actually 1 month behind. So when you use get month, just like the caveat when we use the arguments, the month is going to be 0 based. Okay, so if I were to make this date January, let's say 1/2/2020, now you'll see I get 0 for the month. So just know that that's 0 based. What you could do is just add a 1 to this, and then that will give us the correct month. All right, and then if we want to get the day of the month, so we'll say d dot, and that's going to be get date. If I do that, I get 28th. Today's October 28th. If we want to get the day of the week, then we do get day. Okay, so get day, why do I keep putting a colon? So get day will give us the day of the week. Get date will give us the day of the month. Now we also have some methods that have to do with time. Like if we want to get the current hours, we can do get hours. If we do that, you'll see I get 9. It's 9:37 right now. If we want to get the minutes, we could do get minutes. So 37. If we want to do seconds, we can get seconds. So pretty self-explanatory. And then we can also get milliseconds. So we'll say d dot get milliseconds. All right. Now, there might be times where you construct a date from these methods. So, for instance, if I wanted to do, let's say, create a template literal with backticks, and then I could use this syntax to put in my whatever I want to put in here, variable, any JavaScript expression. But let's say we want to get the full year, and then I'm going to go outside of that, the curly braces, and put a hyphen, and then we'll do d dot get, let's say get month, but let's add a 1 to it, and then we'll do another hyphen, and then we want to get the day of the month, so we'll do d dot get date. And if I save that, I forgot the parentheses on the full year. And there we go. So now we have a string representation of the date using these methods. So I found myself doing stuff like this in real projects. Now, there's an API that we can use for dates. It's called intl.DateTimeFormat, and it's a more modern and powerful way to format dates in a locale sensitive way, because obviously, you know, different places they interpret dates and times in different ways. So we can actually pass in arguments like en-us for the United States, or whatever the locale is. So let me give you some examples of that. So we'll say x equals, and it's going to be I, so capital I, NTL dot, and then date time format. Okay, and then I'm going to put in my locale, which is en-us, and then let's do dot format, and then I'm going to pass in my date, my D variable. So if I save that, I get this 10/28/22. Now, if you're in the UK, this might look a little weird to you. So what we could do is, instead of EN-US, I could say -GB, and then it's going to put the day first, which looks crazy to me, but you know, every country, every area is different. To get your default locale, you could just pass in default. All right, so if I do that, it's going to go back to the US because that's where I'm located. Now, if you wanted to just get, like, let's say the month, I'm just going to copy this down. You could add options in here. So after the default, I'm just going to put a comma and then open up some curly braces. And we could say month. Say we want to get the month, and then let's say we want the long format, so we'll just say long as a string. If I save that, it'll give me October. All right, and I'll show you some of the other options in a minute, but there's a shorter way to do this. Right now what I'm doing is calling the API, and then I'm passing in the date, which is our D variable. But on that D variable, you have a method called toLocaleDateString. And if we do that, or actually you can just use toLocaleString, and then we can pass in the locale. I'll just say default, and then I could pass in options, like for instance, if I want to do, let's say month, and get the short, and I'll paste a link in here to the documentation where you can see more about this API, but you'll see I get oct. Okay, so instead of having to do this intl date format and then pass in your date, you're just calling a method on your date object and getting the same thing. Now I'm just going to paste in here. Let's see, I'm just going to paste in this, and let me just set X to that so we can log it. And if I save that, we get Friday, October 28th, 2022. At 6:49:11 a.m., which is not correct. That's not my time zone. I don't know why I have Los Angeles here. I want to do, I think it's new_York. There we go. So that's more like it. But yeah, so you can do weekday. Now, if you just wanted, for instance, the weekday, you could just pass that in like that, and you get Friday. So this is a newer way of doing things rather than this up here. Using this DateTimeFormat API, and that's what I would probably suggest using. It's more location specific, and you can format your dates and get whatever you want from the date pretty easily.